So I'm delighted to be sat in the living room with Peter Freeman, who has led quite an extraordinary life, born into racing, um, blind since birth, and done an awful lot of things. Peter, would you want to take it from there, from the start, please?
Well, I think it would have been more of a surprise if I hadn't got into racing, because on both sides of my family there are horses and racing involved. My father was a huntsman for several different hunts over the country, as indeed was my grandfather and other members of his family. And my mother was one of the champion point riders in the north, in Northumberland, where she was brought up. And her brother, i.e. my uncle, was also involved with horses and eventually trained some very good horses. So that by the time I was 11 or 12, we were going to race meetings and everything. And the first one I went to was Kempton on a Boxing Day, which wasn't quite so crowded in those days. But I remember a horse called Halloween winning, and that became my favourite horse. And its jockey, Fred Winter, became my favourite person, probably the person I've liked best in racing all my life. And I gradually grew into it. And in I think it was 58, it could have been 59, my memory's getting faded. My uncle won the Gold Cup with Kirsten, and I was so involved with it and everything that the PE teacher stopped the lesson so that we could hear it on the radio for Kirsten to win, and I was so excited about that. And then in 58, my uncle on my dad's side, Arthur Freeman, won the Grand National on Mr. Watt. So it's no wonder that I've followed racing ever since, and I've been a very, very lucky boy, because I've seen, I can say some of the more historic moments in it. I've been there for all CU Then's 3 champion hurdles. I was there for Persian Wars champion hurdles. I was there when Desert Orchid won the Gold Cup. I was there when Dawn Run became the only one to do the champion hurdle and Gold Cup double. I saw both those races. So really, and I was there for Best Mates 3 Gold Cup. So I've been so lucky in what I've seen, and I've had great memories. And I do have to say, I love Cheltenham, and so my family has sort of influenced me. But now I think I'm passing on my own influence to my daughter and even my grandson, who absolutely loves it, and it has to wear Barry Geraghty silks when he goes to the races.
Peter, I was introduced to you at Cheltenham by Julie Williams, daughter of Freddie. And she's messaged me and said, I must ask you about your childhood following the hunt on a pony.
Ah, yes. Well, I was born in Ireland, and I have 2 blind brothers as well. And I'm the middle one. And just before the younger one was born, we had this pony. I remember her name was Bet. And she was a broken-winded old thing. And my dad, we trotted her home behind our pony and trap we used to travel around in Ireland in those days, because my dad was a huntsman with the United Pack. And we got this pony, and we used to take it out, and she was such a brilliant pony, broken-winded or not. She used to take us and gallop along with us, and we used to ride to the meet with our dad on the pony, and then he would go off, and obviously we couldn't keep up with the big horses, but this pony would follow along and run up the Irish banks and jump down the other side. And we bought it for £17, I remember, and believe it or believe it not, this pony became so famous for carrying these 2 blind boys behind the hunt, etc., that even in those days it sold for £100 when we were forced to leave Ireland, so that we as blind boys could have education, specialist education, which wasn't available in Ireland at the time. But that was a lovely pony, and she helped us to learn to ride, and helped again to sort of have this instinct for horses in our blood, really.
So that must have been a bit of a wrench for you boys, having to leave that pony.
We had to come to England because, as I say, we had to have education, and fortunately all 3 of us passed a scholarship to go to a private school, as it was then, in Worcester College, where boys, it was only boys then, used to come from all over the world. I mean, my best friend came from Israel, for example, and we were very, very lucky, and we had experiences that many a school child never has. And I say that being blind has brought me some things that being sighted would never have brought me, because with only 60 boys in the school from 11 to 18, we were able to go in regattas for rowing. We used to go in swimming teams. All right, we didn't used to win very often against the ordinary sighted schools, but we competed and learned how to lose with grace. Sometimes we won, and we learned how to celebrate with joy. But we have done things that other school children, because if you're in a school of 2,000 or 3,000 people, you can never ever get to the top in anything necessarily, but because there were so few of us, we always had the chance. And I used to run, and we used to have a running track, and believe it or believe it not, one of my records for 100 metres between the ages of 14 and 16 still stands at the school even now, 60 years later.
And are you still in contact with the school?
To be honest, this is not going to go down well, I must tell you. You might edit that bit out. But to be honest, no. One of the great things Barbara has done for me is that she has taken me away from the blind world and made me realise, if I didn't realise it already, which I hope I partially did, but that I am the exception in the world, and the world doesn't revolve around me. Now, I have to say, this is going to be very controversial, that I do think an awful lot of disabled people think the world revolves around them. But you have to understand, and I hope I understand, and partially thanks to Barbara's encouragement and etc., you have to understand that we are the exception, and it is up to us to fit into your world, not up to you to fit into our world. And that's been my belief that Barbara's instilled in me, and I'm sure she's right. So unfortunately, though people will say, how silly of you, I don't have hardly any, if any, blind friends.
So, Peter, we now welcome Barbara. Hello, Barbara,
Hello.
your wife. And I believe you're quite a partnership when it comes to your unique sort of way of studying form.
Okay.
Well, what we have is I have a little machine called a braille, which is like a mini computer in many ways. And Barbara, after race meetings and everything, reads me the results and even articles about each race so that I can insert pieces of information into my little computer, which helps me study the form. On this computer, I can, just like anyone else with their computer, I can put in a little sign that says find, and type in the name of a horse, and it will find it in any of the files that I've got on the computer. So I can look for any horse anywhere at any time. But this is down to the work that Barbara puts in on it. I mean, every Saturday morning, for example, I have to spring up early and go and get the paper, and Barbara reads out the paper, and then I go through it and pick out the horses I want the form for, and Barbara reads me out the form. So she does give quite a lot of her time to help me enjoy my horses. So much so that I think Barbara will agree, when I met Barbara and her family, racing was the last thing they would watch. Now, her brother is a member of Newmarket, even though I don't like the flat, but her brother's become a member of Newmarket because he used to come to Cheltenham with me for the 3 days of the festival, and we had some very good times, her brother and I. And now, I think even Barbara will agree, she tends to watch the horses even if I'm not here.
Oh, yeah.
And I've sort of influenced the family considerably as to what they do, and their interest in racing is almost as good as mine in some ways.
Now it is. Before technology, though, it used to be all done by braille, and we used to have to buy the paper every day, the Racing Post, and then we just used to read all the format that you wanted, all the results that you wanted, and it all used to be done in braille on paper and kept in folders. So we have hundreds of folders full of information about horses from years ago.
Well, they've gone now,
But
really,
they've
haven't they?
gone,
Because
But
I mean,
now that we have technology, it's much easier.
I mean, even though this little computer of mine does come out in braille, it works just on the 6 keys and a little space bar, and you have to type in all sorts of symbols to tell you what you want to do with it. But you can type in the horses, and it still comes out in braille along a little bottom line. But it's not like reading pages of braille. And the great joy of it is, as I say, you can dial in a date, for example. Just Boxing Day last year, I could just dial up Boxing Day, and it would produce the results for Boxing Day within a second for me. Or I could dial up the name of a horse. So of course that's much better than having reams and reams of braille paper, and you've got to search through it because you can't have a find system. So it's, you know, I mean, Barbara's really pleased that I can refer to it so much quicker rather than her having to find it again for me in the paper the next day.
Yeah, technology has certainly helped.
Yeah, oh no doubt about it.